those of you who don't know me, I'm Chief Richard Tantello of the Irondequoit Police Department, and I appreciate everyone's interest and really dedication to our process here that we're starting today. For welcoming remarks, I would like to introduce the Supervisor of the Town of Irondequoit, David Seeley.
Thank you, Chief, and welcome everyone. If this is your, whether it's your first or your 100th visit to our great town library, we always love hosting community forums here. This is always the ideal setting to bring the community together. So I really appreciate the turnout here. This is, in its nature, a very good thing we're doing. I always believe that the best way to afford really any good government, and no less important than law, no more important than law enforcement, but any good government is facilitated and fostered by good communication. And good communication is open, transparent dialogue, I believe. I think the only way we can help develop a even stronger bond between the community and our law enforcement, which is sworn to protect our community, is by having an open and engaging dialogue, and one that isn't just a one-time, a one-off, one that extends and exists in perpetuity. So this is the first of what I hope will be many community forums of this nature as we look to, I say, enhance and improve the strengthen the bond between our law enforcement and the community. I took political philosophy in college, and I'm reminded that John Locke said that the core existence of government is to preserve the welfare of the people. And in many instances, you see that welfare protected by the law enforcement that protects the community. I said last week we were doing a radio show on 9/11, the anniversary of September 11th, and I said in many ways that was the perfection of that bond which exists between law enforcement and its community, because you had first responders, law enforcement, EMT, fire services running into a burning building indiscriminately, not knowing who was in there that they were going to save, but that was really our society getting it right. And our hope is we get it right far more than we get it wrong, and I do believe that. But I think this forum is an acknowledgement that in the true nature of our state, we can always do better, excelsior, ever upward. That's the state motto, and we can always look to improve ourselves. I just want to, because he won't do this obviously, but thank Chief Tantello. He deserves a big pat on the back for really bringing this together. This is an offspring of a broader initiative, which I think he will go into greater detail about. I also want to acknowledge Chief Phelan here from the Greece Police Department. Chief, thanks for coming. U.S. Marshal Charlie Salinas here. And hiding in the back, as always, Deputy Supervisor John Perticone, who served as, helped with the planning committee. He is our liaison to the police department and does a fantastic job. Give John a round of applause. So Chief will give a broader overview of what our plan of action is for today. I will just say this. The goal of this is to facilitate and foster two-way communication. We're here to listen. We're here to help, I guess, develop a blueprint for moving forward to make our police department an even better police department in serving the community. We're here because we're willing to listen to the honest feedback. Sometimes in government, whether it's law enforcement or all forms of government, you can sometimes operate under the assumption that everything is perfect. And but I think us being here today is an acknowledgement that we can always do better. And again, I think the goal here today is from honest and open dialogue that hopefully is positive and more positive than negative, honest feedback. And feedback comes in all forms, but that we can really move forward and embrace this model of 21st century community policing that we've embraced and that has come out of a national movement. So with that, thank you again for being here. I know it's difficult to give up your time. It's a terrific turnout, and hopefully the next one we'll build and have an even stronger turnout. But enjoy the day, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. As Mr. Seeley mentioned, this is really part of a much larger process that we've been involved in, and Chief Phelan has been there from day one in regards to the Greater Rochester Police Community Relations Summit, when Reverend Stewart 2 years ago called for a summit of police community relations involving all local law enforcement agencies. And we were very happy to get on board with that and become a partner with that. And we've held 4 summits within the city of Rochester talking about police community relations. One of the goals and objectives that was established over the last 6 months was to then broaden the perspective of these forums or summits and to offer this kind of event within the municipalities adjoining the city of Rochester. I'm pleased to say we are the first one to host the event. I know that others will follow, and I believe that my colleagues in other jurisdictions will be holding them. I think they want to learn from my mistakes. But we have assembled, I think, an especially impressive group of people to come forward and to assist us, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the things that we hope to be able to do, and that my goal and objective is to establish a line of communication, a partnership, and input with the community that we serve, the greater community. As someone who has lived in Irondequoit predominantly all of his life, I've seen the community change. And we now have become a regional shopping area for people within really northeast Monroe County to come here for shopping experiences. We have become a regional banking site for people within northeast Monroe County. We certainly have always had the opportunities to recreate here with our beautiful waterways and Seabreeze Amusement Park. And then, of course, the fine dining establishments. You won't get better Italian food anywhere in the town of Irondequoit. It's because of the things like that that we want to be able to build a strong relationship. I had the good fortune, along with some of my other colleagues, to be invited to the White House briefing on the President's task force associated with 21st century policing. I was very humbled to go, and I learned a great deal. And along with my colleagues, we came back really energized and excited to perhaps venture on a new path in law enforcement. As someone who's really been in this field for nearly 4 decades, I have a great passion for serving the community that I have taken an oath to serve and to protect and to treat with dignity and respect. And we hope to be able to perpetuate that with our work here today. You will see that various throughout the rooms, and we have 2 additional break rooms upstairs, we have the 6 pillars within that 21st century policing model to develop a strategic plan for the Irondequoit Police Department. Where is this department going? What direction are we going to take? Somebody asked me, well, it's about improvement. Well, it's always about improvement. It's about changing with the times, about being able to respond to situations, challenges, and opportunities that we're faced with. And that's ultimately our goal here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Irondequoit Police Department once our keynote speaker is completed. But I wanted to set the tone for that. Over the last 2 years, as I mentioned, we've been working with Reverend Stewart and a variety of faith-based leaders within our community and community organizations. The keynote to that was the signing of the covenant with the Greater Rochester Regional Police Community Relations Summit. Reverend Stewart, Chief Phelan, and all the local law enforcement agencies signed that covenant, indicating that we're going to deliver police, public safety-related services with dignity and respect. So with that, it's on. Okay, Nate. How about this? How about if I turn it on? We already heard from Dave Seeley. So needless to say, I won't be having the social media and technology workshop. Goes without saying. We've had those police community relations summits, and I would like to invite the gentleman who was really the driving force behind that, and an individual that we've had the opportunity to build a good working relationship with. And I had to remind him that some 30 years ago, we actually worked together, but my hair wasn't gray at the time. So, but with that, I would like to introduce the president of the United Christian Leadership Ministry of Western New York, and really the driving force behind the summits that we've hosted in up to this date, Reverend Lewis Stewart. Reverend Stewart.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chief, for that kind introduction. I see a lot of my friends and colleagues here. David Seeley, thank you for having me. Chief Phelan, he's been on that committee. All of us have been working together to improve police-community relations. And it's important that we do so because we see in the news the difficult problems that we are continuing to have all over the nation. The fact that we called together 9 police agencies in the beginning, I think that was October 2016, speaks volumes about what we have been attempting to do. We also got together on January 2017, then that June again of 2017, and finally this past June, which we held at First Church of God, in which we had our greatest number of attendees there. Now, as the Chief said, we've been working on number 1 or 2 of the 6 pillars. The first one is building trust and legitimacy. And we don't think that there can be really transparency and accountability between the community and law enforcement, not unless we build that trust. And there's so many, see, people living in the suburbs may have one perspective of the police. People living in the community have another perspective of the police. So the question is, how do we bridge that gap and come together? Because in the final analysis, we are all God's children. We are all human beings. And so how can we build this bridge, what I call of reconciliation, so we can sit down and dialogue and talk about the mutual aspects of the problems that we are having. And these problems they're there. They are just there. I'm glad to see Wayne Harris here. He's been on vacation for a while. And everyone, Mike, Pauline, everyone. But one of the things we felt that came out of this Police Community Summit, I think was the 3rd one, wasn't it? Was this covenant. Does everyone have a copy of it? Yep. This covenant. And this covenant is very important because the covenant is biblical language. It speaks to what we shall do together to bridge the gap of reconciliation. And one of the main things that come out of our summit, the big summit, was the mini summit. And Chief Tantello is the first one of all the chiefs of police that were sitting at the table to hold a mini summit here in Irondequoit. Let's give him a hand. Thank you, Chief. So I welcome you to this first mini summit in Irondequoit. We are going to talk, we're going to discuss, we're going to dialogue, and hopefully we will look at how to effect solutions within our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Stewart. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I think much has been accomplished in the last 2 years, and we continue to build upon that. What I'd like to be able to do, because this is not a product of one, you know, the person at the microphone maybe gets the accolades and the credit, but in reality, this has really been an exceptional team we've put together in moving forward. I would like to have the Forum Planning Committee please stand, and we'll hold our applause until the end for that group. Captain Mark Bean, Deputy Supervisor John Perticone, Terry Buford from the library had another engagement, but we certainly thank him for this beautiful site. Reverend Marilyn Cunningham, Pamela Davis, I think might still be outside doing registration, Colonel Andre Evans, Reverend Patrina Freeman, Mary Heckman, Matt Kruger, Officer Kylie Nichols was kind enough to still be around for us. Nora Pellish from the Irondequoit Library, Pastor Don Stevens, Maria Vecchio, the assistant to the supervisor, and Liz Wood. So if we could, Cynthia McGee, I'm sorry. Can we please give them a round of applause for all their great work? I'm extremely pleased with the quality and caliber of the forum facilitators that we were able to put together. Some are repeat names, but it's an exceptional group, and I'm really honored that they took the time to be part of such a positive experience as we look to move forward. If I could have them stand, and then we'll also give them a round of applause. Colonel Andre Evans, Reverend Patrina Freeman, Wayne Harris, retired Deputy Chief from the Rochester Police Department, Cheryl Hayward, Carrie Ivers, Luana Jones, Lauren Kelly, James McCauley Jr., Cynthia McGee, Emma Morrison, Patrick Pinkerton, Vince Russello, Joseph Searles, Teresa Sheffield, and Aaron Thompson. Thank you all very, very much. So I now have 3 minutes to talk about the Irondequoit Police Department. But I'm going to tie it into the 6 pillars. This police agency takes nearly 61,000 calls for police service a year. As you can see, 2,000 motor vehicle accidents, a number of arrests, prescription drug drop box, community engagement, and 5,800 hours of training that our officers participate on an annual basis. That number might fluctuate, but not by much. Community connection is key, and it's important for people to be able to access that community connection, whether they had a positive experience with our agency or a negative experience, because that's the only way we can move to make some corrections, improvements, enhancements through training, through counseling, through mentoring, and working through those issues. So as you can see, someone can call 911 and ask for a patrol supervisor. They can contact the chief's office directly. Social media obviously is a critical and an important platform for us to be able to use. I still get letters in the mail, which is awesome. But, and you can always get a hold of us by any form or fashion if you go to our website. We want to be able to identify what do we need to change procedurally, what do we need to change in regards to our policies and procedures and some of the things associated with that. So most recently we had discussion about when a vehicle is impounded and what it takes in communication with the district attorney's office if it's involved with some type of criminal action to be able to get that vehicle released. Let's say, for example, I'm the registered owner. I did nothing wrong, but somebody was driving my vehicle, and perhaps it was used in a criminal offense or something associated with that. Now I am becoming a victim. I can't get to work. I'm not able to transport my kids to school. What can we do to advocate so that vehicle can be released? Sometimes we're successful and other times we're not, because we could be jeopardizing a criminal investigation. By being able to have that candid and transparent conversation with the registered owner is critical, and being able to explain that process and seeing what we can do to expedite its release. And that's just one example associated with it. We do sit on the Center for Dispute Settlement Police Community Advisory Council with Cheryl Hayward, and we have a great working relationship with them. And we'll offer the service of mediation if we have a difference of opinion or different perspective. Quality of service inquiry. So we are guided by general orders. So if there's a policy or procedure, it's in there, it's in the book. And we have to make sure that those are obviously adhered to and that our people are following the proper protocols. We're an accredited police agency and by New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services and have been accredited since 1991. So our community engagement, you've heard a little bit about it. We've been very much on board with the Greater Rochester Community Relations, Police Community Relations Summit Committee. We've done citizen police academies. We're out in Neighborhood Watch, Crime Stoppers. If you give us an opportunity to come, we're there. If you give us an opportunity to come and eat, we're there even more. National Night Out is the crown jewel, and Officer Nichols once again has done an exceptional job. We're nearly, or perhaps over 600 people attend this event down at Camp Eastman, doing an exceptional job, and we have the opportunity to display the type of work that we do and really build a relationship with our community through that event. Project Tips, Mr. McCauley does an exceptional job with that. And we really enjoy going out to other neighborhoods where we can work with our adjoining communities because we share so many common interests and goals and objectives. Shop with a Cop. 25 youngsters well, this year only nearly 30 of them were able to work with a police officer. And by the way, this is not me. Right? That's Mike DiGiovanni. That's Lieutenant Mike DiGiovanni, since retired. But I would be taking my kids to like karate lessons, and a woman would walk in and she'd say to me, "Didn't I just see you at Target?" And I'm like, "No, that wasn't me. I wasn't driving a police car." So, but an exceptional program. We take youngsters who obviously can benefit from this experience, and they get a gift card to shop for themselves and for their family during the holiday season. Coffee with the Chief. I'll go anywhere and everywhere, have coffee with folks and have a discussion. We have a great working relationship with our school-based community, and we really enjoy the relationship that we have with both of our public school districts as well as with St. Catherine and Bishop Kearney. One of our favorite events is Kickball with the Cops, and we go down to the various playgrounds or camps, play kickball with the kids. And really enjoy it. It was so popular, the fire department said, well, we want to be a part of it. So then they show up with the fire truck and hose all the kids down after playing a hot game of kickball. And we have a freeze pop, but it's really a lot of fun and and a great way to build a relationship with youngsters. Internship program. We've had 2 of our interns become police officers, one here and one in another agency. They've done an exceptional job. They've gone on to become crime analysts and things of that nature. So it's a very rewarding experience for the students, but it's also rewarding for us because we remember where we came from. Yes, I've been doing this 4 decades, but I remember when I did my internship in 1977 with the Irondequoit Police Department. Subject management review. One of the things that we did when I was appointed as chief was really look at subject management or use of force and what's happening there. What kinds of things are we seeing in these reports where we could review them, maybe introduce some different training opportunities. So when you're in your various breakout groups, think about this. So it talks about police training, and you're wondering, well, what's that all about? Well, is it about de-escalation? Is it about communication? Is it about crisis intervention? Is it about the ability to communicate more effectively with people who might have some special needs? So that's really all about that particular topic. It could go on for hours and hours as far as what you would like to see this police agency move toward. Now, we have been, I think, at the forefront from police training perspective with autism awareness, and we've done, I think, a very good job with that, and a number of families have really appreciated the response given by the police department when this particular individual who's on the spectrum has that engagement with police. We have reduced the number of use of force incidents, which subsequently lends to less officer injuries, less quality control issues, less litigation, enhanced training options, and maybe most importantly of all, a better sense of trust and confidence in the police department from the community that we serve. I talked about training. We do as much as we can, about 150 hours per officer per year. We talked about the general orders, and we continually update those. You see some of the enhancements we made. Now the one we're working on is a missing person investigation solely dedicated to children, trying to determine what's the cause for that runaway, what's happening in that particular situation. Let's establish an early warning system so that we can offer some intervention. There's a reason why, and I'm going to use the term child, but perhaps young adult, right? But there's a reason why that person is continually running away. And we are on the first line of that, just like we're on the first line of the heroin overdoses, to be able to kind of get a sense of what can we do to offer some intervention and something much more productive than writing a report, putting it in a database, and then getting the call back that says the individual's returned. Let's dig a little bit into that, and let's prioritize these young people who unfortunately might become the victim of human trafficking. Police officer selection is key. One of the things that now Pat told me there's a red thing on here. Let's see. Look at that. All right, we're good. Maybe I can handle that pillar now. So we're going to talk about a comprehensive selection process, ranking on the list, physical agility, medical, candidate interview process, right? And right there, psychological examination. So it's an intensive examination utilizing the psychological process, of which I really can't speak to, because when I talk to the psychologist on the phone, it gets a little complicated for me. But needless to say, the models that he's using are tried and true. And in many instances, we have not selected an individual because of that rating, because of some issues that might exist in that particular person's either behavior or background. And we do a very extensive background investigations where we go out and talk to the neighbors, we go out and talk to the employers, we go out and talk to the school officials. So when you're in those special groups about pillars, we talk about, what do you want us to do for police officer selection? What is it that you would like to see in a police officer that's going to represent this community, this police agency, and have the interaction with the public that we do on a daily basis? When I was at the White House briefing, it's like, okay, we went to 61,000 calls last year, so how many people do we engage with? So one of the professors from Johns Hopkins indicated, well, if you use the rule of 4, Chief, that would be a good number. Now, I'm not quite sure where he got that from, but he's a PhD, so he's got to be right. So if you figure 4 times 61, that's 244,000. Have I got that right? Tell me yes. Okay. So 250,000 people a year we are engaged with. And what is our quality control is that it doesn't even amount to 1%. Now, is one complaint too many? Absolutely. But being really realistic, we know that that's going to happen, but we want to be able to manage that in a really effective way. So needless to say, that's not Josh Greenfield down there. But the captain and I, in our time together, have really built, I think, a strong relationship with the community. Captain Bean is very well respected. And actually, we are under exceptional leadership in the town of Arundecoy with Supervisor Dave Seeley, Deputy Supervisor Perticone, and the entire town board, because they advocate and allow us the resources to be able to do our job effectively, efficiently, and with dignity and respect. And just like them supporting this first, if you will, mini summit, or I like to call it a forum, just to kind of set us apart, this first forum outside the city of Rochester that's talking about a very contemporary, important, and human topic. And that's critical for us in our success. So the plan today is we will break you up into your breakout sessions, and you will work with these exceptional facilitators to identify a list of action items. Then you will go on to your next breakout session. You've all signed up for them. And at the end, we will get a report about what those are, just to capture and like an overview. We will take that input, data, response, collection of information, and ultimately drive that into a strategic plan for the Arundecoy Police Department. So if you say police training needs to be enhanced in the area of, and you happen to pick a particular topic, crisis intervention, mental health related issues, dealing with people with, who might have special needs, then that's the priority we put there. Up till now, and you know, I was interviewed by a media outlet, it's like, well, you know, don't you think you do a good job, Chief? Well, of course I think we do a very good job, right? But am I really meeting, or are we really meeting the needs of the community if that voice has not been heard? If that person's opinion has not been respected? If that individual needs to make a statement about a personal situation that they had and how we can correct it? That's the value of today's session. That's the value of you spending 3.5 hours with us. And I appreciate that, because that's the only way we can do a better job together as a community. So I'll stop talking now, and I will say to you that we're going to head off to our first breakout session. Now, you see in the large numbers in the back, right, on those flip charts, we have breakout sessions, or for pillars 1, 2, 3, and 4. And because of the great turnout associated with this, pillar number 5 is going to be on the second floor. in room 214, the Glenhaven room, and it'll have a forum program announcement on it along with the number 5 on it. Pillar number 6 will be in the Newport room, room number 216. You'll see a similar sign, but with the number 6. So with that, you will have the opportunity for a very short break because I talked too much, and you could put that in your evaluation. But we do have some coffee and water for you to take with your breakout session that will start at 4:45 and go to 5:30. The good news about 5:30 is the pizza will be here, all right? So you'll have that opportunity, but more importantly, with the breakout session, you have an opportunity to really meet each other, get to know each other, build a relationship, and recognize the exceptional work that we're going to do here together as a team. So with that, I will send you on your way. Thank you very much for your time and energy, and I'll see you in about 45 minutes. Again, I want to thank everybody for their time. It's greatly appreciated, a lot of energy. A lot of great dialogue and conversation. I know that in the past, with the benchmarks that have been established, we know that when there's food and conversation and laughter, we have achieved an objective, which I think is exceptional, bringing a group of people together who maybe didn't know each other before coming here. So as we move forward with this, and that's the 2 key words, move forward, what I would like to be able to do is each group will represent on their pillar, if you will, from their breakout groups, very briefly, just a couple of minutes. So for clarity, by moving forward, we will collect that data. These will all be collected by us. We will then analyze each of the suggestions within the pillars. And you're going to see that there's going to be a crossover. So under public trust and legitimacy, individuals were talking about various training components. And of course, we would dovetail with pillar number 5, which is police training, and working through that. Once that's all collected, we will once again reach out to participants and see if they would be willing to serve on a focus group for a particular pillar and help us extract the data or the conversation, comments, and direction we need to move forward with our strategic plan. So again, under police training, if it's identified that we should go through this type of training, that would be an action item, and then we would either look to find training within Monroe County and the greater Rochester area for our officers and civilians to participate in, or maybe we have to send somebody elsewhere to become a trainer in that area and bring them back to the department. So that's why sometimes time constraints are a little bit of an issue. The answer isn't no, it's just when can we get it done, all right? So public, nobody wanted to put them up here, James, just you. I have to say that the facilitators, as I went around, did an exceptional job. They are some of the finest people that I know. Some of them have indicated that they don't want me to ever call them again. Would that be correct? But if the facilitators with the various pillars can give a brief overview, I think that would be helpful for everyone.
Well, first of all, good evening, and let me give kudos to Reverend Patrina Freeman. Where are you? Right there. She was my co-facilitator. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of reading all these. What I'm going to do is try to point out some things that I found very interesting. What we did is we looked at building trust and legitimacy from the current state to the desired state and strategies on how to get there. Made it very, very simple. Now, we look at the current state, and one thing I thought was interesting, that one of our participants said, as a female, she felt discriminated against, as a female. And I thought that was interesting. I thought it was interesting that they brought out the fact that from the top down, we're talking about Chief Tantillo now, that he presented a very positive role model, and that his officers followed that role model we felt that it was interesting. And then when you look, some said there was a lot of racial profiling. We're talking about the current state now. Police are viewed as an occupying force. I thought that was an interesting comment. An occupying force, warriors. As a white person, police are trusted, limited contact. As a person of color, I have no issues. The quality of service depends upon who you know. If you know someone in IPD, you're going to be treated better than if you don't. Interesting. Now, we talked about desired state. Equality in law enforcement, regardless of color, respect, professionalism, courtesy, without stereotypes. We talked about dispelling stereotypical perceptions, equality. And we didn't talk about color. We talked about human. That's important. That's important. Instilling mutual respect. Now, I want to bring this one out. Instilling mutual respect. What I heard on both different panels, and certainly, Patrina, correct me if I'm wrong, is that sometimes IPD comes with a macho attitude, with an overbearing, intimidating attitude, rather than one of service. And the thought was that in a desired state that they would come with an attitude of service rather than with an attitude, police respond with a guardian attitude, not so much an intimidation attitude. And then we talked about strategies. And one that was repeated on both of our sessions was that they'd like an opportunity to speak with the rank and file. And I think it was Reverend Stewart who said that a lot of times, you know, you go into meetings and you got the chief there and the captain there, and the conversation is very good back and forth, but it doesn't go down to the rank and file. So that if they had an opportunity to have a forum with the rank and file, that would be better. I thought that was very inspirational. Then they talked about community involvement in hiring as a strategy. They talked about user-friendly information sharing and collection. Now, certainly, when we went through the beginning on our orientation, the chief brought up some very, very impressive ways of going back and forth and as far as establishing relationships. And that's a good thing, but they wanted to be more user-friendly. And I thought, and I had to put this in, this is probably my editorial license coming to the fore. But one of our participants said the only bad call you can make from your house in regards to service from the IPD, the only bad...
Patrons with the owner of a gold Lexus.
Oh, that's me.
Your lights are on. If you could come down to
Just
the
joking.
circulation
Just
desk
joking.
or go out and turn them off, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Because we talked about it, sometimes people do not want to make a call, they don't think it's that important. And the comment was made, the only bad call you can make is the one you don't make in regards to service. I thought that was a good one. Patrina, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I just want to point out in the strategy, what we heard from both was community involvement. Everyone was willing to work with the police to get to know them. Someone after we had finished the session was even talking about maybe having the police who work in certain neighborhoods meet with the neighborhood watch or the neighborhood association, and maybe having those folks inviting that particular police officers to dinner so they can get to know each other. Francis Assisi always says that people don't want to know how much you know until they know that you care. And so a lot of the strategies that was listed in our group about community and trust was really showing that the police care for us and that we care for them. So that's all I have to say. Chief?
When we started the exercise, we really just had a conversation about, okay, what kind of training and education is happening now? What does it look like? How much time do you spend on it? Then we talked about we asked, what would you like to see more of and what would you like to see less of from an officer training and development perspective? Basically, our group reported, the groups reported that they'd like to continue the technical sort of training. They call it CIT training, de-escalation training, the training that helps them do their jobs, right? The pulling of the gun and the, you know, all of that stuff that I'm not real familiar with, at least. In addition, they discussed that they'd like to have more training on the cultural side of things in terms of how to deal with different groups, how to deal with transgender individuals, how to deal with, they have training on dealing with folks that have autism, right? So you've done well there. So they'd like to see more of those types of opportunities. What else came out of our session? Let's go down the list here. So I mentioned these things. More investments, more money invested into training and education. They'd like to see more of. Opportunity to collaborate with other community agencies and partners to decrease training costs that might occur if you're increasing training programs. What other things here? Hold this for me. I don't make a good Vanna White, by the way. Increase hours in simulation training, reality-based training, learning from incidents to prevent officer life loss. So in terms of, what else here? I mentioned that. Again, the partnerships. One of the things that I talked about was inviting police officers to come to Excellus, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and sample some of our diversity education programs. We also talked about Wegmans customer service program. What's the name of it? The training?
The training that I participated in is called Conscientious Capitalism and Accelerate. Wegmans may have a different, if you will, brand on that. But
Okay.
Same vendor.
Same concept in terms of how we treat our customers and having officers go through more training like that. Overall, I think we've covered pretty much many of the concepts and topics that were highlighted in group number 1. But it's essentially continue to do what you're doing and do more of it, and also add more of the cultural sorts of sensitivity kinds of training. Anything you want to add?
There was also mention that the community would like to know what types of training, what's the content of the training that you currently get, be more transparent about what it is that you're already getting. There was mention about training costs, the fact that you may have 52 officers within IPD, but then you pull them out 1 or 2 or 3 to actually do some training. You're going to have to actually have someone backfill them to be on the street. So developing some way that it's more cost effective for you to have all of your officers, for example. You can't take a whole day and have all of your officers go through the training. So what's the best, more cost effective way to do that? And I think that was it. We talked about the Wegmans cultural competency. De-escalation, I don't believe that's a common standard training that you all get. I could be wrong. Chief Phelan, gone.
Training, actually, Monroe County Public Safety Training Facility set the model for New York State with that training.
There's also mention increase the study of the use of body cams and how to train the officers on proper use of body cams, which I thought that was interesting. And I think that was potentially it. That was it.
Thank you very much, Joseph and Luana. Good job. I appreciate that.
Okay, so some of well, what we started off with was we started off with the IPD's mission statement to kind of get folks acclimated to what we were going to talk about. And then we went into the conversation of defining or getting people's ideas of what the definition of community policing was. And some of those definitions involved police interacting with citizens, building trust, citizens helping law enforcement, citizen training to aid law enforcement, all aspects of the community addressing issues of concern. And with our second group, similar ideas, relationships with police and members of the community, police engagement with the community, more of that, police taking more of a proactive position, and situational awareness by police. So those are some of the definitions or the ideas or concepts from the community. Then we started to list out a number of actions. Some of them carried over to what we've heard already. Police having face-to-face interaction with businesses among them. Having more of the meet the chief sessions, which enables an opportunity for the IPD to humanize, become more human toward the community, or humanizing the police and not having that warrior persona. A mutual understanding between police and the community. Let's see what else we got here. Relationship building. Psych testing. Has psych testing of the IPD been reflected of current 21st century policing? Some of the other ones from our first group. Reintroduce programs like the Officer Friendly Program and other programs to interact with children of all ages. Clearing up misconceptions of the role of policing, diversity and relationship building. And we also, which was kind of a crossover between the two groups, talked about civilian review boards. And there was a little back and forth conversation around that, which was a bit interesting. So so that's it. Did you have us more?
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to do when we were talking about it, and part of the reason that we started with asking the groups that worked with us what the definition of community policing was we felt it was important for us to fully understand the concept. You know, it's one thing to say community policing, but actually without knowing what it is we're talking about, then we tend to get lost. And one of the things we recognized in our groups were that there's a large misconception of what police work is really about. And we felt as a group that it was important, if we're going to get to the point where we can work together and develop strategies to solve some of the issues that are mutually impactful for us, was that we had to get to know one another a little bit better. In other words, we had to educate law enforcement officers about the communities that they're serving. We also had to educate the community towards law enforcement so that they have a real understanding of what it is they're seeing in the media. We talked a lot about relationship building. How can you and I work together to solve this burglary problem over here if, you know, we're at odds, if we're opposed to one another, if you're looking at me and seeing only a uniform without knowing me as Wayne, and if I'm looking at, Jeff, I'm looking at Jeff and, you know, not knowing that Jeff's a chaplain, then he and I are going to have a difficult time actually communicating, coordinating, and working together to solve that problem. So that's sort of the nature of where we were discussing community policing. Questions? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. So as Chief said, our pillar was technology, and we mainly focused on two separate areas. The first was body-worn cameras, and the second was social media. And we kind of had a couple discussions with each session, starting out with what are some of the positives that could potentially be associated with body-worn cameras? What are some of the negatives that could be associated with that? And then having those thoughts in mind, what are some good policies that IPD could institute to make sure that they're using these technology tools effectively? So first, when we started discussing body-worn cameras, a lot of the things that folks were talking about had to do with transparency, privacy, making sure that the technology was used for its purpose of giving a fuller and more accurate picture of what's happening out in the field without allowing it to be abused and manipulated in a way that could be detrimental to both the Irondequoit Police Force as well as the residents that they're tasked with serving. So some of the suggestions that came based off of that were talking about having a standardized set of training for all of the officers who are required to wear the body-worn cameras, and having that be transparent with the public so the public understands not just what these cameras are, but what they're for and how they will be used, and they build a certain level of trust based off the fact that they know there's a standardized procedure for how every police officer should use this technology. And when doing that, there were a lot of folks who felt that there's a need for not just the use of it, but the continuous monitoring and evaluation of what that use is leading to. Is it increasing the positive outcomes that we want it to increase? Is it decreasing the negative incomes that we want it to decrease? And have a very transparent review of where you are in that process, and let the public know that you are continuously reevaluating this and using it as a tool, not only to get more information, but to learn based off that information. And within that, there was a lot of discussion about how to incorporate other stakeholders, whether it be community members or IT staff, to make sure that the technology is being used effectively and there aren't issues with it malfunctioning or it being turned on or off at inappropriate times, and also to make sure that it's properly stored and documented. Some of the other things that folks mentioned with body-worn cameras, let me see here, using the video footage as a training tool. So if there are instances where an officer does something properly or an officer does something improperly, IPD can go back and use that footage as a teaching mechanism to show officers, this is what you should be doing, this is what you shouldn't be doing, and then they can, again, have a continuous learning process and create a dialogue based off of that. I would say some of the final things maybe talking to the community and making sure you get community input in terms of what's the most appropriate policy for when this footage should and should not be released, to ensure that any footage that is released properly with the appropriate context and takes into account people's privacy concerns, and also at the same time creates a true and full picture of what's happening out in the field, not just for the police officers, but for the residents who are interacting with those police officers. Moving to the social media piece, we had several discussions with a wide range of people who had different views based off of where they are demographically. So if you look at different age groups and even different segments of our society on other spectrums, different people use different mediums of social media, and different people use social media for different purposes. So that really drove a lot of our conversations. And one big point that we came to based off of that was the idea that if you want to have an effective media strategy utilizing technology, you need to go across several mediums, and you also need to acknowledge the fact that you can't get everyone through the social media platforms, because there are significant demographics that either don't have access to it or don't significantly use it or aren't going to go to your sources even when they are on those sites. So there was a lot of discussion about the need for still using print, the DNC, the Post, using the Irondequoit website, and then using the different social media platforms. One interesting thing that we did touch on with some of the local high school students who were kind enough to come tonight was a discussion of the idea that sometimes there are emergency situations that impact students while they're in the school and while it's difficult for them to get accurate information. And several of the students mentioned that possibly some sort of an app or a notification system or some sort of broader communication piece that could alert them of emergencies that are occurring in the school or incidents that are occurring in the general area of the school, when they're leaving school or entering school, or at any time when they're not necessarily tied into, being able to make a phone call to someone, but they're all in a place where if they need to get that information, they need to get it quickly and they need to get it clearly, so it's not just a system of rumor spreading throughout, but they can be properly notified. So that was one interesting point, and I think it speaks to the broader point that we had within social media of different people use different sources of social media and just media in general. So you need a wide strategy that takes into account a lot of those different demographics. So I think that's most of it. Would you like to? Okay, so I think that's all for us.
Some definite themes emerging in the review of these breakout sessions. We had a couple of lively conversations. Our area was policy and oversight. It was also nice to see such a spectrum of people represented. We had some divergent views and a lot of interesting talk. So for the first session, which I review, and then my partner Cheryl will do session 2, I'll just read through them essentially. Improved communication, just simply that. Making it clear to the community what services are on offer, what the police, what the fire department can be expected to do, why you would call on them. The thought was that some folks really don't know all of the services that are available to them, or how they might be able to make use of and call on these municipal forces. Improve, gain clarity around what force is. A significant amount of discussion revolved around the use of force and the implications of it. So having a shared understanding of what force means and when it is warranted, when it can reasonably be called into use, for the community to understand that and to be able to use that to assess things that happened in the community. Develop processes or trainings to improve interactions with adults who suffer from traumatic brain injuries. And I think it was mentioned earlier that there's been some good work done apparently around folks who are dealing with autism. It was noted that there seems to be not quite the same level of training around folks who may be dealing with traumatic brain injuries or other sorts of disabilities. So developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injuries. Ongoing training, milestone training, check-ins, making sure through these ongoing professional developments and trainings that there's still a continued fit after an officer has graduated academy and is out on the force. And for that training to kind of be 360 training, all areas, and for it to also adapt as the community changes. So it's not kind of a one and done sort of a deal where, the training this year might be different from training 5 years down the line as the demographics in the community change, as things happen that are important to the community, that be reflected in the training. Sensitivity, cultural awareness, cultural competence, kind of in line in that same vein. But there's a lot of rich discussion, and that's something that I'm sure folks who participated in that particular aspect will want to give more input to, because how that sensitivity training or that cultural awareness training transpires is important. There were thoughts about, assigning cops to different areas explicitly, so that if they typically have a beat in one particular area, maybe move them around elsewhere so that they are interfacing with different groups of people. But I think it's been mentioned previously, that was also a topic in our conversations, this need for cultural sensitivity and awareness. And then QA, quality assurance, external input. That was kind of a hot button issue. And the need for civilian awareness of and input, especially around use of force, but an expanded relationship between the force and external groups, community groups, is a need. So that's another area that I think will be rich conversations had around that. Do you want to get into session 2?
Sure. So our session 2, we had some great youth voices in there, some additional perspective. So one of the things that came up in the group in determining, developing possibly a policy was developing a data system which monitors traffic stops of citizens. But in doing so, that would help you analyze the ratio that people of the race proportion of those that are being stopped. And to do that, we got some feedback that maybe if you document and capture the information of all stops via IDs or student IDs or non-driver's IDs, it may help to identify if there are practices in place that are affecting people of color that come through the communities via stops. We also looked at implementing body-worn camera usage for all officers, and Captain Bean was so kind to come and talk to our group about that. There is a process where those would be deployed soon is the goal for Irondequoit Police Department, so they are working on that as we speak. Looking to, again, identify and partner with agencies to deliver diversity implicit bias trainings. That was a theme that I think is really important when we look at the makeup of IPD, you know, the thought of what the diversity makeup of its officers are based on the community and the change in look of the community. The diversity issue and the implicit bias trainings were a really significant concern for both groups. And also, in terms of those trainings, to develop benchmarks that ensure that those trainings are being consistent and effective with officers going outside and starting to implement some of those behaviors based on the information and lessons learned during those trainings. To partner with schools to develop processes for de-escalation techniques when interfacing with students. A lot of times some of the issues that may be addressed or an officer may be called in to address may have a whole other leg to it that stemmed from it. So just developing systems and partnering with teachers to ensure that the appropriate interaction happens and it results in more positive problem solving as opposed to negative impacting on that particular student during the interaction. Again, implementing traffic red light cameras to serve as an agent for some traffic infractions. Again, it's about reducing the contact, if possible, with officers and citizens to reduce the perception of maybe racial profiling in those cases. And again, some of the improper behaviors that and those complaints that may have come in through Irondequoit Police Department, and overall improving officer communication during minor traffic stops to avoid the public perception of over-policing. And that stemmed from a conversation where, you know, the question is, why do we see 6 or 4 or 3 officers that may show up at one stop? And again, you know, it could be a simple, we want to make sure that our officers are safe in this particular interaction, but again, the perception is there's something going on. That particular passenger, driver may now feel a little bit intimidated about what's going on. But again, it's about the perception that what's going on, is it over-policing that's happening? Is there a need for multiple police officers to show up on one particular incident? So just, I think overall our groups really thought about the look, the perception, and the conversations inside and outside of the Irondequoit Police Department community that's being told and retold and whatnot. So this is what we garnered from our group.
Well, our group, we were talking about the wellness and safety, and these are the 4 topics that we kind of concentrated on: personnel, technology and equipment, procedures, and policies and management. And we really kind of just summarized everything into about 5 different bullet points. Our first bullet was talking about mental health, resiliency training, increased mental health support for officers, crisis management, peer support teams and chaplains, Our second point was conflict resolution, where we talked about crisis intervention, mental health issues, and again, this came up in a couple of the conversations, talking about citizens that had some kind of mental or autism, dementia, and then doing a quick evaluation of the officers at the scene. We also kind of looked at some of the lessons learned, talking about data tracking, and then after action review policies. And then number 4, again, policies, culture changes. And one of the important things that came up with in the group was talking about having 2 officers in a car versus a lot of times, you know, when there's multiple officers that come to the scene, and possibly taking those officers from another scene that could be using their attention. Then also we talked about the technology piece of it and some of the equipment. We talked about the blue alert, the cameras, the body cameras, and then the best caliber, and then the traffic light management was a big topic as well. And then our 5th point was public education and communications, and talking about the emergency vehicles and public awareness. Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. So thank you all very much for those excellent reports and everyone's contribution to those dialogue, feedback, conversation, and potential action items. As I mentioned earlier, and I'll be very brief, we will capture this documentation and move forward with a strategic plan, and you'll be hearing from us again. I just want to close by saying thank you all very much for coming. Whether you were part of the planning committee, part of the facilitation team, and an important member of the community who came here to participate and help us with moving forward and really providing a high level of public safety service to our community. I appreciate it. I know everybody's schedule is busy, but this is extremely important for our community, and this is extremely important for all of us to work together as we move forward. So, yes, sir?
I was wondering if there's a way for the folks who just came in here from the community to remain aware of what happened going forward. I know the facilitator is going to be doing that. I wasn't sure.
Yep. We hope to be able to communicate and create, if you will, a group email list. And whether we have to contact you by phone or by mail to be able to establish that, but we would create a group email to be able to give you updates. So if a person wasn't able to participate, if you will, on a focus group, but they would still be able to get updates about the progress that we're making and could offer input, if you will, based upon what proposed recommendations are as we move forward. So we want to keep the group working together and at least keep people informed. And I think the key word for almost every pillar we heard tonight was communication. So we now have expanded our communication capacity by another 65 people who will tell 10 people. So now that's 650 people who will tell 10 people, which, if my math is right, makes 6,500 people. But don't question me on that. All right. It's been a long day, and I appreciate you coming here today. I appreciate your commitment to this community and to this process and to this police department. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.